Welcome to part 2 of Boring History for Sleep. Why it sucked to be a medieval knight and more. If you're just joining us, don't worry. I've dropped a link to part 1 so you can catch up when you're ready. Tonight we're sinking even deeper into the harsh, unromantic truth of medieval knighthood. Less glory, more grime. Get comfortable, settle in, and let history quietly unfold. She moves through the crowded hall like sunlight through stained glass, her presence transforming the mundane gathering into something that feels almost sacred. Lady Eleanor possesses a beauty that transcends mere physical attractiveness, though her dark hair and intelligent eyes would be remarkable in any company. What captures your attention more completely is the grace with which she navigates the complex social currents of noble society, her conversation revealing an education that extends far beyond the decorative accomplishments expected of high-born women. She speaks Latin with the fluency of a scholar, discusses philosophy with genuine understanding, and demonstrates a wit sharp enough to match any courtier's verbal sparring. Your courtship, if it can be called that, proceeds according to the rigid protocols that govern noble romance. Conversations happen under the watchful eyes of chaperones. Letters are exchanged through intermediaries, and every gesture carries layers of meaning that must be carefully interpreted. You find yourself composing poetry for the first time since your page days, struggling to capture in verse the effect her presence has on your battle-hardened heart. The irony is not lost on you that learning to express love proves more challenging than learning to kill. Your hands, which can wield a sword with deadly precision, shake when attempting to write tender words. Your voice, which has shouted orders across battlefields, becomes uncertain when speaking of emotions that have no place in military training. Love, you discover, requires a different kind of courage than facing enemy steel, the willingness to reveal vulnerability that warfare taught you to hide. Eleanor's responses to your tentative advances suggest a reciprocal interest that sets your heart racing faster than any cavalry charge. Her letters, written in a delicate script that speaks of hours spent in careful education, contain subtle references to shared interests and gentle encouragement of your romantic inclinations. When she appears at castle gatherings, her eyes seek yours across crowded rooms with a directness that both thrills and terrifies you. The realization that you are falling in love brings its own form of warfare, an internal battle between the hardened warrior you have become and the capacity for gentleness that her presence awakens. You find yourself caught between two worlds, struggling to reconcile the man who has killed without hesitation with the one who trembles at the touch of a lady's hand. The transformation feels as radical as your original transition from boy to knight, yet more mysterious and less controllable. Your lord views your romantic attachment with the calculating eye of a chess player, considering his next move. Eleanor's father controls strategic lands and maintains important alliances that could prove valuable in future conflicts. A marriage between his daughter and one of your lord's knights would cement bonds that might prevent future wars or provide crucial support should conflict arise. You begin to understand that even love serves political purposes in the world of medieval nobility. Negotiations between the two families proceed with the formal complexity of treaty discussions, because in many ways that is exactly what they are. Your personal feelings, while not entirely irrelevant, matter far less than questions of dowry, inheritance rights, and the strategic advantages such an alliance might provide. You watch these discussions with growing anxiety, understanding that the outcome will determine not just your personal happiness, but the entire course of your future life. The betrothal ceremony, when it finally occurs, feels like a victory more complete than any military triumph you have achieved. Eleanor's hand in yours, her voice speaking the formal words of acceptance, her eyes meeting yours with unmistakable affection. These moments eclipse every glory the battlefield has offered. For the first time since childhood, you experience unqualified happiness, untainted by the bitter knowledge that everything worthwhile carries a price. The months of betrothal pass in a dream of shared conversations, chaperoned walks through garden paths, and the gradual deepening of understanding between two people learning to love within the constraints society imposes. Eleanor reveals herself to be not just beautiful and intelligent, but possessed of a strength that complements your own. She does not flinch when you describe the realities of warfare, nor does she attempt to change the parts of yourself that bear scars from military service. Your wedding day dawns clear and bright, as if the very heavens approve of your union. The ceremony in the castle's chapel brings together two families in bonds that extend far beyond personal affection to encompass political alliance and mutual advantage. Yet beneath the formal protocols and ritual obligations, genuine love transforms what might have been merely strategic arrangement into something approaching sacred mystery. The early months of marriage prove that happiness, like military victory, requires constant vigilance to maintain. You and Eleanor must learn to navigate the daily realities of shared life, from the mundane details of household management to the deeper challenges of maintaining intimacy while fulfilling the public roles your positions require. Your wife proves remarkably adept at managing the castle's domestic affairs during your lord's frequent absences, her intelligence finding practical application in tasks ranging from overseeing servants to managing supplies. War calls again before your first anniversary, this time a conflict that threatens to engulf the entire realm in violence. The summons arrives with the same formal language as before, but now the prospect of campaign carries additional weight. You have someone to lose, someone whose safety depends partly on your survival and success. Eleanor faces your departure with the stoic dignity expected of a knight's wife, though you catch glimpses of fear in her eyes that mirror your own. The night before you ride to war, you lie awake beside your sleeping wife, memorizing the sound of her breathing and the warmth of her presence. The happiness you have found feels both precious and fragile, a treasure that warfare might snatch away with the casual efficiency it has shown in taking everything else you have valued. You understand now why some knights never marry. Love makes warriors vulnerable in ways that no amount of armor can protect against. Your departure at dawn breaks both your hearts with the clean efficiency of a well-sharpened blade. Eleanor stands in the castle courtyard, her composure intact, despite the tears that track silently down her cheeks. Your own eyes remain dry through sheer force of will, but the effort costs you dearly. As your horse carries you away from the castle gates, you turn for one final look at the woman who has become your reason for living, knowing that you may never see her again. You are 25 when the tremor first appears in your sword hand, a barely perceptible shake that you dismiss as the natural consequence of too many battles and too little rest. The campaign against the northern rebels has stretched into its second year, a grinding affair of burned villages and desperate skirmishes that has aged every man in your company beyond his natural years. Your body, which once seemed invincible in its youth and strength, begins to whisper warnings that you are not yet ready to hear. The first signs manifest during the siege of a fortress whose name you can no longer remember, though its stone walls haunt your dreams with their stubborn resistance to assault. Your legs, which once carried you up scaling ladders with the agility of youth, now protest each climb with aches that linger long after the day's fighting ends. The weight of your armor, once worn as easily as clothing, settles on your shoulders like a burden that grows heavier with each passing hour. Sleep, when it comes at all, brings little rest to a body that has been pushed beyond its natural limits. Your joints stiffen during the night, leaving you to rise each morning like an old man, despite your relatively young years. The other knights notice your decreased mobility, but say nothing, understanding that acknowledging such weakness might spread like plague through ranks already strained by months of continuous warfare. The physician who travels with your lord's household offers little comfort when you finally seek his counsel. His examination reveals what you have already begun to suspect. Your body is beginning to fail under the accumulated stress of years spent in heavy armor, fighting battles that leave invisible wounds as damaging as any sword cut. The constant impact of weapons against shield and mail has damaged joints that were never designed to absorb such punishment repeatedly. Your sword arm, once capable of wielding a blade for hours without fatigue, now trembles after brief engagements. The tremor starts small, barely noticeable unless you concentrate on keeping your hand steady, but it worsens with each passing week. During one particularly vicious melee, your grip fails entirely, sending your sword spinning away into the mud, where it lies useless, while enemies close in for what should have been your final moments. Only the intervention of a young knight-errant, eager to prove his worth by saving a veteran's life, prevents your death in that nameless field. The boy's enthusiasm and fresh strength carry you both to safety, but the knowledge that you required rescue from someone half your age cuts deeper than any weapon ever has. You have become what you once pitied, a warrior whose body can no longer match his spirit's willingness to fight. The wasting disease, as the physician calls it, affects different men in different ways. Some lose strength gradually, their muscles shrinking despite adequate food and rest. Others find their reflexes slowing until reactions that once came instinctively require conscious thought that arrives too late to prevent injury. Your particular affliction seems to attack the very foundations of your warrior identity, the steady hand and strong arm that made you dangerous in combat. Night brings its own torments as your body rebels against the damage you have inflicted upon it through years of service. Pain shoots through joints that have been stressed beyond their capacity to heal, while muscles that once moved with fluid grace now spasm and cramp without warning. You learn to muffle groans of discomfort, unwilling to disturb the sleep of companions who face their own daily struggles with failing bodies. The castle's armourer, a craftsman who has served 3 generations of knights, recognizes the signs of your condition with the sad wisdom of experience. He has fitted armor for countless warriors who gradually required modifications to accommodate bodies that no longer functioned as they once did. Padding is added to ease pressure on sensitive joints. Straps are adjusted to redistribute weight, and weapons are rebalanced to compensate for reduced strength. Letters from home bring news that feels increasingly distant from your current reality. Eleanor writes of daily life in the castle, of seasonal changes and social gatherings that belong to a world where bodies remain reliable and strong. You struggle to compose responses that do not reveal the extent of your physical decline, unwilling to burden her with worries about problems she cannot solve from afar. The young knights who have joined the campaign look to you for wisdom and guidance, unaware that the veteran they respect is slowly crumbling from within. You share what knowledge you can about combat techniques and survival strategies, but the bitter irony is not lost on you that your own survival now depends increasingly on avoiding the very situations where your experience might prove most valuable. Your horse, a replacement for faithful Thunder, who died during the previous campaign, seems to sense your weakness with the intuitive understanding that animals often possess. The destrier adjusts his gait to minimize jarring impacts, moves more carefully when you mount and dismount, and positions himself protectively when other horses threaten to jostle you during formation riding. The beast's consideration for your condition touches you more deeply than human sympathy might. War councils become exercises in concealment as you struggle to hide the extent of your physical deterioration from commanders who might remove you from active service if they understood how compromised you have become. You learn to brace your arms against table edges to prevent visible trembling, to shift position frequently to prevent joints from stiffening completely, and to speak with authority that masks the uncertainty you feel about your continued effectiveness. The breaking point comes during what should have been a routine patrol, when your body simply refuses to obey your will. Mounting your horse becomes impossible without assistance. Drawing your sword requires both hands to overcome the weakness in your dominant arm, and walking more than short distances leaves you gasping for breath like a man 3 times your age. The recognition that you have become a liability to your companions forces you to confront truths you have avoided for months. Your request for leave to return home is granted with the sympathetic understanding of commanders who have watched many good men succumb to the invisible wounds that warfare inflicts. The formal language of your discharge papers speaks of temporary medical leave, but everyone involved understands that your days as an active warrior have ended. The journey home stretches before you like a final campaign, one whose outcome will determine whether you have any useful life remaining. The escort assigned to accompany you consists of younger knights whose careers are ascending as yours declines. Their respectful treatment cannot entirely mask their recognition that you represent their own possible future. A reminder that even the strongest warriors eventually fall to enemies that cannot be defeated with sword and shield. The knowledge that your story serves as warning rather than inspiration adds another weight to the burden your failing body already carries. Each mile traveled toward home brings you closer to a reunion with the wife who married a strong young knight, but will now receive a broken man whose best years lie behind him. The fear that Eleanor might see your condition as a betrayal of the promises you made on your wedding day gnaws at you more persistently than physical pain. You rehearse explanations and justifications, but none seem adequate to bridge the gap between what you were and what you have become. The castle walls, when they finally appear on the horizon, represent both sanctuary and judgment. Within those familiar stones waits the woman whose love sustained you through the worst moments of campaign life, but also the mirrors that will reflect your transformation from knight to invalid. The question of whether love can survive such fundamental change haunts your final approach to the home you left as a warrior, but returned to as something far more fragile and uncertain. You are 26 when you cross the threshold of your home castle for what you fear might be the last time as anything resembling the man who left. The great oak doors, reinforced with iron bands that have weathered countless storms, swing open to reveal the familiar hall where you once danced at your wedding feast. Now each step across the worn stone flag sends jolts of pain through joints that protest even this simple movement, and you must grip the wall for support that you pray appears casual to watching eyes. Eleanor waits in the solar, the private chamber where you spent your brief honeymoon learning the rhythms of married life. She has positioned herself near the window where afternoon light will illuminate her face while leaving yours partially in shadow, a consideration so subtle and thoughtful that it brings tears to eyes that have remained dry through battles and betrayals. Her beauty has ripened during your absence, gaining depth and character that surpass the fresh loveliness of youth. The moment of your reunion unfolds with the careful choreography of two people who love each other but no longer know quite how to express that love. Eleanor's intake of breath when she sees your condition is barely audible, but you catch it nonetheless. Your body, once a source of strength and protection, now broadcasts weakness in every line and movement. The scar on your temple has faded to a thin white line, but new marks have appeared. The subtle signs of chronic pain written in the set of your shoulders and the careful way you lower yourself into a chair. Your wife's response to your transformation reveals the steel beneath her gentle exterior. Where you expected pity or disappointment, you find instead a practical assessment of changed circumstances and immediate adaptation to new realities. Eleanor's questions focus not on what you have lost, but on what remains. Your knowledge, your experience, your capacity to contribute to the castle's governance in ways that do not require physical strength. The first weeks of your homecoming pass in a careful dance of adjustment as both of you learn to navigate this altered version of your marriage. Eleanor reorganizes the household to accommodate your limitations without making them obvious to castle residents who remember you as an invincible young knight. Stairs are avoided when possible. Meetings are held in ground floor chambers, and your participation in castle activities is structured to minimize physical demands while maximizing your continued authority. Your lord, now graying and bearing his own collection of campaign scars, receives you with the understanding of a man who has watched many good knights fall to warfare's accumulated toll. The conversation in his private chamber carries undertones of mutual recognition. He sees in you a preview of his own likely future, while you see in him proof that useful life can continue even after the body begins to fail. His offer of a position as military advisor and trainer of young knights provides dignity, along with purpose. The castle's daily rhythms, once as familiar as your own heartbeat, now feel strange and disconnected from the man you have become. Servants who knew you as a vigorous young warrior now approach with a deference tinged by awkwardness, uncertain how to interact with someone whose status remains high even as his physical presence diminishes. You catch them exchanging glances when they think you are not looking, their expressions mixing sympathy with the uncomfortable recognition of mortality. Training sessions in the castle's practice yard become exercises in creative adaptation as you learn to pass on knowledge through demonstration and instruction rather than personal example. Young squires and pages gather around you with respectful attention, eager to learn from someone who has survived what they hope to achieve. Your hands, which once wielded weapons with deadly precision, now trace patterns in sand and gesture at targets, while your voice conveys lessons written in scars and suffering. The tremor in your sword hand worsens during periods of stress or excitement, making it impossible to hide your condition from students who depend on your expertise. You develop techniques for managing this weakness, bracing your arm against solid surfaces, using both hands for tasks that once required only one, and timing your demonstrations for moments when your symptoms are least apparent. The young men you teach pretend not to notice these accommodations, showing a kindness that humbles you. Eleanor's pregnancy, discovered 2 months after your return, brings joy mixed with complex emotions that you struggle to understand. The child growing in her womb represents hope for the future, but also responsibility that your condition makes more challenging to bear. The prospect of fatherhood, which should bring uncomplicated happiness, instead carries questions about your ability to protect and provide for a family when your own body has become unreliable. Night terrors, a legacy of too many battles and too much violence, disturb your sleep with increasing frequency. You wake thrashing and calling out warnings to comrades who died years ago, your body flooded with the chemical urgency of combat, even as your conscious mind recognizes the safety of your own bed. Eleanor learns to wake you gently from these episodes, her presence serving as an anchor to peaceful reality when nightmares threaten to drag you back into war's chaos. The castle's physician, an elderly man whose knowledge comes from decades of treating warriors' ailments, provides what comfort he can through herbal remedies and practical advice. His honest assessment of your condition offers no false hope. The damage to your joints and muscles will worsen with time, and the tremors may eventually spread to affect your entire body. Yet he also emphasizes that your mind remains sharp, your experience valuable, and your capacity for useful service far from exhausted. Letters from former comrades still fighting in distant campaigns arrive sporadically, carrying news of battles won and lost, friends dead and promoted, and the endless cycle of warfare that continues without your participation. These dispatches from a world you can no longer fully inhabit bring both relief and regret. Gratitude for your escape from war's grinding brutality, mixed with sorrow for the brotherhood you have been forced to abandon. Your relationship with weapons undergoes a fundamental transformation as tools that once extended your will become sources of frustration and reminder of lost capabilities. The sword that served you faithfully through countless engagements now feels impossibly heavy in your weakened grip. You commission the castle's armorer to create lighter practice weapons for your teaching duties, acknowledging publicly what you have known privately. Your days of bearing true weapons of war have ended. Young knights seeking your counsel present problems that span from tactical questions about siege warfare to personal dilemmas about balancing honor with survival. Your responses draw from hard-won wisdom that transforms your accumulated suffering into something approaching wisdom. The pain that once seemed meaningless begins to acquire value as experience that might spare others from similar ordeals. The approaching birth of your child coincides with autumn's arrival, a season that mirrors your own transition from active service to contemplative advisory roles. You spend long hours in the castle's library, a chamber you rarely visited as a young knight, but now find fascinating for its collection of military treatises and historical accounts. Reading about campaigns and battles provides a way to remain connected to warfare without requiring physical participation. Eleanor's labor begins on a night when autumn storms lash the castle walls with rain that sounds like arrows striking stone. You pace the halls outside the birthing chamber, your unsteady gait marking time until the midwife's announcement brings news that will redefine your understanding of responsibility and love. The child's first cry pierces through the sound of wind and rain, announcing the arrival of someone who will know you only as you are now, not as you once were. Holding your newborn son requires adaptations that would have seemed impossible during your years as an active knight. Your trembling hands, which once gripped swords with unwavering steadiness, must be supported by Eleanor's steady ones to safely cradle the infant whose life depends on your protection. The boy's tiny fingers wrap around your thumb with surprising strength, creating a bond that transcends your physical limitations and connects you to a future that extends beyond your own failing body. You were 28 when you fully embraced the bitter irony of your new role, teaching young men to excel at something you desperately wish they would never have to experience. Your son, now walking on unsteady legs that remind you painfully of your own current condition, plays at your feet while you instruct a group of eager squires in the realities of combat that their romantic dreams have never imagined. The practice yard echoes with the clash of wooden swords wielded by boys who believe they understand what awaits them beyond the castle walls. The morning lessons begin with weapons training adapted to your physical limitations. You can no longer demonstrate proper sword work through personal example, but your voice carries hard-won authority as you guide young hands through forms that might preserve their lives in actual combat. Your trembling fingers trace patterns in sand, showing how footwork and timing matter more than brute strength, how survival often depends on techniques that have nothing to do with honor or glory. Each student who comes to you carries dreams of knightly achievement that mirror your own youthful fantasies. They speak eagerly of winning tournaments, rescuing maidens, and covering themselves with battlefield glory. You listen to these aspirations with the patient attention of someone who knows exactly how such dreams end. In mud and blood and screaming horses, in diseases that kill more efficiently than enemy weapons, in the slow grinding of human bodies against the machinery of warfare. Your teaching methods incorporate brutal honesty that shocks young men accustomed to romantic tales of knightly valor. You describe the weight of a dying friend in your arms, the smell of gangrene in infected wounds, the sound a man makes when a sword finds the gap between his ribs. These lessons strip away illusions with surgical precision, revealing the career they aspire to join in all its grim reality. The castle's lord observes your instruction sessions with approval tinged by concern. He values the practical knowledge you impart, but worries that excessive honesty might discourage recruitment at a time when the realm faces continuing threats. Your conversations with him reveal the delicate balance between preparing young warriors for reality and maintaining the enthusiasm necessary to fill military ranks. Some students respond to your harsh truths with greater determination, understanding that knowledge of warfare's realities makes them more likely to survive their first campaigns. These young men ask detailed questions about siege conditions, disease prevention, and the psychological toll of killing. They practice not just sword work, but also the mental disciplines necessary to function when civilization's veneer strips away under combat's pressure. Others retreat from your instruction, seeking teachers who offer more comfortable versions of military service. You watch them gravitate toward instructors who emphasize glory over survival, honor over effectiveness. Part of you feels relief when these romantic idealists remove themselves from your classes. They were never likely to survive their first real battle anyway. Your own son, still too young to understand the significance of what he observes, watches your teaching sessions with wide eyes that take in everything. You see him imitating your gestures with toy soldiers, hear him repeating phrases from your lessons in his innocent play. The knowledge that you are already shaping his understanding of warfare fills you with complex emotions. Pride in his quick intelligence mixed with horror at the world you are preparing him to enter. Eleanor supports your educational efforts while privately expressing concerns about the psychological toll this work takes on your already fragile emotional state. She watches you struggle with the moral complexity of training young men for experiences that damaged you so severely. Your evening conversations often revolve around the question of whether preparing others for warfare's realities makes you complicit in perpetuating the cycle of violence that claimed your own physical health. The practical aspects of your instruction extend far beyond weapons training to encompass the mundane skills that determine survival in campaign conditions. You teach students how to maintain equipment in hostile environments, how to recognize the early signs of diseases that spread through military camps, how to find clean water and safe food when supply lines fail. These lessons lack the dramatic appeal of combat training, but often prove more valuable in actual warfare. Your reputation as an instructor grows throughout the region, attracting students from neighboring castles whose lords recognize the value of realistic military education. Young knights arrive expecting to learn advanced sword techniques and leave instead with comprehensive understanding of warfare's true nature. Some thank you for knowledge that later saves their lives. Others curse you for destroying their romantic illusions about military service. The emotional burden of your teaching role manifests in increasingly frequent nightmares that blend memories of your own campaigns with fears about the fates awaiting your students. You wake from dreams where former pupils die in battles you never fought, their faces accusatory as life leaves their eyes. Eleanor learns to recognize the signs of these episodes, offering silent comfort that speaks volumes about the depth of your psychological wounds. Letters from former students serving in current campaigns provide feedback on your instructional methods that arrives written in blood and survival statistics. Young men whose lives you helped preserve write gratefully about techniques that proved effective in actual combat. More painful are the reports of students who died despite your training, their deaths serving as reminders that even the best preparation cannot guarantee survival in warfare's chaos. Your son's development into a bright, curious child forces you to confront questions about his future that you have avoided since his birth. The boy shows natural aptitude for the martial skills that form the foundation of noble male education, but your own experience makes you question whether steering him toward military service represents love or cruelty. Eleanor argues for allowing him choices you never had, while tradition and social expectations push toward the knightly path that nearly destroyed you. The castle's armory becomes a laboratory where you experiment with equipment modifications designed to improve survival rates among young warriors. Working with the master armorer, you develop lighter mail that provides adequate protection without the crushing weight that contributes to joint damage. You design training weapons that more accurately simulate combat conditions while reducing injury rates among students learning their deadly trade. Guest lecturers occasionally supplement your instruction, visiting knights whose own experiences provide different perspectives on military service. Some offer sanitized versions of warfare that emphasize glory and downplay suffering. Others share stories even grimmer than your own, describing campaigns where entire armies died of disease before seeing battle. You find yourself serving as moderator between these extremes, seeking balance between honesty and hope. The psychological preparation of your students requires techniques you develop through trial and error, having never received such training yourself. You teach breathing exercises that help control fear in combat, mental disciplines that maintain focus when chaos reigns, and philosophical frameworks that provide meaning in the face of warfare's apparent senselessness. These lessons often prove more challenging than physical training, requiring students to examine their own motivations and fears. A particularly promising student, the third son of a minor lord, reminds you painfully of your own youthful enthusiasm and determination. His eagerness to prove himself in battle mirrors your own past attitudes, while his quick grasp of tactical concepts suggests natural military aptitude. You find yourself investing extra effort in his education, hoping to provide him with tools that might spare him from your own fate, while knowing that no amount of preparation can guarantee survival. The approaching spring brings news of renewed military campaigns that will likely claim some of your students as participants. You intensify your instruction, cramming months of additional training into weeks of preparation time. The knowledge that you are conducting final examinations for young men who may not survive to apply their lessons adds urgency and poignancy to every session. Your final words to each departing student carry the weight of benediction and warning combined. You remind them that survival matters more than glory, that living cowards serve their families better than dead heroes, and that the greatest victory is returning home whole to those who love them. Some listen with the respect due a veteran's wisdom. Others dismiss your cautions as the bitter words of a broken old soldier who has lost faith in knightly ideals. You are 32 when the first letter arrives, bearing news that one of your former students has died in a border skirmish, his body found among the fallen with your lessons apparently forgotten in the chaos of his final moments. The young man's father writes with grief-stricken courtesy, thanking you for the training that should have preserved his son's life, but somehow failed when it mattered most. The parchment trembles in your unsteady hands as you read words that transform abstract instructional failures into personal tragedy. Your son, now old enough to understand that his father once fought in wars, asks questions that pierce through carefully constructed defenses against painful memories. His innocent curiosity about your scars and trembling hands forces you to find ways of explaining violence to someone whose world still contains magic and wonder. You struggle to describe warfare's realities without destroying the childhood innocence that represents everything your military service was supposed to protect. The castle's great hall hosts fewer celebrations than in years past, as economic pressures and ongoing conflicts drain resources that once supported elaborate feasts and tournaments. You observe these changes from your position at the high table, where your place reflects past service rather than current capability. The younger knights who now dominate court life treat you with respectful deference that cannot entirely mask their view of you as a relic from earlier, more glorious times. Eleanor's second pregnancy brings joy tempered by practical concerns about your ability to provide for an expanding family. Your tremors have worsened over the years, making even simple tasks like writing letters or handling coins increasingly difficult. The pension your lord provides covers basic needs, but offers little security against the uncertainties that seem to multiply with each passing season. The prospect of another mouth to feed adds weight to worries that already disturb your sleep. News from former comrades who continue serving in active campaigns paints a picture of a realm under increasing pressure from enemies both foreign and domestic. The wars you once fought seem to have resolved nothing, merely shifting conflicts to different territories and different generations of warriors. You begin to question whether your years of service accomplished anything meaningful beyond adding your name to the long list of men broken by warfare's demands. Your teaching duties expand as the castle's lord recognizes the value of your realistic military education, but the work takes an increasing toll on your fragile emotional state. Each new group of eager young faces reminds you of all the students who have died applying lessons you taught them. The weight of their deaths accumulates in your conscience like sediment in a riverbed, gradually choking the flow of enthusiasm that once made instruction rewarding. The physical deterioration that began with tremors in your sword hand now affects your entire body with the relentless progression of water wearing away stone. Walking becomes an exercise in careful balance. Writing requires assistance from Eleanor or a scribe, and even simple tasks like dressing yourself demand planning and patience. Your body has become a prison that confines a mind still sharp enough to recognize its own limitations. Your son's aptitude for martial skills becomes increasingly apparent as he grows, his natural coordination and quick reflexes suggesting he might excel at the knightly profession that has defined your family's service for generations. The boy's enthusiasm for weapon training mirrors your own youthful eagerness, creating a painful echo of dreams and ambitions that led you to your current condition. The question of whether to encourage or discourage his military interests haunts your daily interactions with him. A delegation of lords arrives at the castle seeking your counsel on defensive strategies for their territories, which face increasing pressure from raiders and hostile neighbors. Your reputation as a military theorist has grown to compensate for your inability to serve as an active commander, but the irony of planning campaigns you cannot fight adds another layer of frustration to your already complex relationship with warfare. The meetings drain your limited energy while reminding you of capabilities you have lost. Letters from the royal court arrive with increasing frequency, carrying offers of advisory positions that would provide greater income and prestige at the cost of leaving the familiar safety of your lord's castle. The prospect of serving in the capital's sophisticated but dangerous political environment appeals to your desire for continued relevance, but terrifies Eleanor, who fears that court intrigue might prove as deadly as battlefield combat for someone in your vulnerable condition. Your daughter's birth during a particularly harsh winter brings unexpected joy to a household that has grown accustomed to managing chronic illness and limited prospects. The child's healthy cries fill chambers that have echoed too often with your own sounds of pain and distress. Eleanor's recovery from a difficult labor provides hope that this pregnancy will not drain her strength as severely as you feared, though the additional responsibilities of caring for 2 children stretch household resources thin. The castle's physician, now an old man whose own hands shake with age, provides increasingly pessimistic assessments of your condition's progression. His honest discussions of your likely future, further loss of mobility, possible complete disability, and shortened life expectancy force you to confront questions about legacy and meaning that you have avoided through years of day-to-day survival. The knowledge that your time remains limited adds urgency to decisions about your children's futures. Your attempts to record your military experiences in written form prove frustrating as your trembling hands make extended writing impossible. Eleanor volunteers to serve as scribe for your dictated memoirs, but the process of verbalizing traumatic memories proves almost as difficult as the physical act of writing. The stories that emerge from these sessions reveal the full scope of your psychological wounds to a wife who has lived with their effects without understanding their origins. A young knight arrives at the castle claiming to be the son of a comrade who died during your first campaign, his presence stirring memories that have lain dormant for years. The resemblance to his father is unmistakable, from the set of his shoulders to the way he holds his head when listening intently. His requests for stories about his father's service force you to revisit battles and friendships that ended in ways too painful to describe fully. The monastery that serves the region sends a scholarly monk to interview you about your military experiences, seeking to compile a comprehensive history of the recent conflicts. The cleric's questions probe areas of memory that you have deliberately avoided examining, forcing you to confront the full scope of violence you have witnessed and participated in. The process of testimony becomes a form of confession that leaves you emotionally drained, but somehow lighter. Your son's 8th birthday celebration includes a wooden sword crafted by the castle's carpenter, a gift that should bring joy, but instead fills you with complex emotions about the path his life seems destined to follow. The boy's delight in the weapon mirrors your own childhood enthusiasm for military equipment, but your adult understanding of where such interests lead transforms what should be a happy moment into a preview of future sorrow. Economic pressures force your lord to reduce his household size, eliminating positions that are no longer essential to the castle's operation. Your status as a disabled veteran protects your own position, but the departure of servants and minor officials who have become friends adds to the growing sense of isolation that comes with advancing age and declining health. The castle feels increasingly empty despite the presence of your expanding family. Reports arrive describing the deaths of more former students in various campaigns, their names adding to the mental list of young men whose training proved insufficient to preserve their lives. You find yourself calculating survival rates among your pupils, discovering that the percentage who die in their first major battles remains disturbingly high despite your efforts to prepare them for warfare's realities. The statistics suggest that no amount of instruction can overcome the fundamental brutality of medieval combat. You are 35 when you finally understand that the stories they tell about knights have almost nothing to do with the life you have actually lived. Your son, now 10 years old and skilled with his practiced sword, listens with rapt attention as a visiting minstrel recounts tales of noble warriors who fight for justice and win glory through honorable combat. The boy's shining eyes reflect dreams identical to those that once filled your own heart, and you realize with crushing clarity that nothing you have learned can prevent him from following the same bloody path that led you to this chair by the fire. The winter chill settles deeper into joints that have never fully healed from old injuries, making movement a constant negotiation with pain that has become your most faithful companion. Your hands, once steady enough to thread a needle by candlelight, now shake so violently that Eleanor must help you eat soup without spilling it down your chest. The tremors have spread throughout your nervous system like cracks spreading through a wall, each small failure of control reminding you that your body continues its slow rebellion against the demands you placed upon it in younger days. Eleanor, now 30, and bearing the accumulated stress of caring for an invalid husband, along with 2 young children, maintains her grace and dignity, despite circumstances that would have broken lesser women. Her hair shows premature streaks of grey that you know are your fault, and lines around her eyes speak of sleepless nights spent nursing you through episodes when pain or nightmares made rest impossible. The woman who married a strong young knight has become the keeper of a broken man, yet she performs this duty with a devotion that humbles you daily. Your daughter, now 5, and possessed of Eleanor's quick intelligence, has never known you as anything other than the trembling figure who tells stories from his chair beside the hearth. She shows no fear of your condition, climbing onto your lap with the casual confidence of childhood innocence. Her acceptance of your limitations provides comfort that adult sympathy cannot match. She loves you as you are, rather than mourning what you used to be. The castle's new generation of young knights treat you with the respectful distance reserved for living relics, their polite conversations betraying their view of you as a cautionary tale rather than an inspiration. They listen to your instruction with dutiful attention, but clearly believe that their youth and vigor will protect them from the fate that befell their teacher. You recognize their confidence because you once possessed identical certainty about your own invincibility. A messenger arrives with news that your old lord has died, carried off by a fever that claimed him despite his survival of countless battles. The man who shaped your early career and provided sanctuary during your decline has joined the ranks of the dead, leaving behind a world that continues to consume young men with the same methodical efficiency it displayed throughout your own service. His death removes one of your few remaining connections to the active military world that once defined your existence, Your attempts to document your experiences for future generations prove increasingly difficult as your physical condition deteriorates. But the work takes on desperate urgency as you recognize that your memories constitute the only honest record of what knightly service actually entails. The romantic chronicles that survive from other warriors bear little resemblance to your recollections of mud, blood, disease, and moral compromise. Your testament, dictated slowly to Eleanor during hours when your tremors permit coherent speech, offers truth that might save lives if anyone proves willing to accept it. Letters arrive from former students who have survived their first campaigns, their grateful words providing glimpses of hope amid the catalogue of failures and tragedies that haunt your conscience. These young men write of techniques that preserved their lives and wisdom that prevented fatal mistakes, suggesting that your instruction has accomplished something meaningful, despite its inability to save everyone who received it. The knowledge that some lives have been extended through your teaching offers partial compensation for the weight of those you could not preserve. Your son's training progresses under the guidance of younger knights whose bodies can still demonstrate the techniques they teach, but he seeks you out for the theoretical knowledge that transforms mere sword work into comprehensive understanding of warfare's realities. These conversations between father and son carry the terrible weight of prophecy, as you recognize that nothing you say will ultimately prevent him from pursuing the path that leads to glory and destruction in equal measure. The royal court's final offer arrives wrapped in elegant language that cannot disguise its true nature. A pension that would provide comfortable retirement in exchange for your agreement to cease training knights, according to your brutally honest methods. The Crown prefers instructors who emphasize honor and courage over survival and pragmatism, understanding that romantic ideals recruit more effectively than hard truths. Your refusal of this offer represents the last act of defiance available to someone whose body can no longer fight, but whose spirit refuses to surrender completely. A fever that begins as minor discomfort evolves into something more serious, bringing with it the possibility that your chronicle might end sooner than anticipated. The physician's grave expression when he examines you suggests that your weakened constitution may not survive another winter's assault. Eleanor's tears, which she tries to hide from the children, confirm what you have already begun to suspect. Your time for making peace with the choices of your lifetime is running short. The nights grow longer and more difficult as pain and memories combine to rob you of rest, leaving you to contemplate the balance sheet of a life spent in service to ideals that proved far more complex than their simple statements suggested. You killed men who might have been good fathers and loyal friends, yet you also protected people who deserved safety and security. The weight of these moral calculations defies easy resolution, leaving you to hope that whatever final judgment awaits will account for intentions as well as actions. Your children's laughter echoes through the castle halls during the brief periods when your condition allows you to forget the accumulated pain of your existence. These moments of simple joy remind you that life contains beauty worth protecting, even if the methods of protection exact prices that seem impossible to justify. The sound of innocence at play provides the only answer you have found to questions about whether your sacrifices served any meaningful purpose. You realize, as consciousness becomes increasingly difficult to maintain, that the true tragedy of knighthood lies not in its failure to live up to romantic ideals, but in its success at convincing each new generation that glory justifies any cost. The boys who will replace you in training yards and battlefields carry the same dreams that once filled your heart, and they will learn the same bitter truths that transformed you from eager volunteer into broken instructor. The final lesson you would teach, if anyone would listen, concerns the fundamental dishonesty of stories that transform warfare's brutal realities into entertainment for people who will never face its consequences. The knight of romantic literature bears no resemblance to the broken man who dictates these words, yet the stories persist because they serve purposes that truth cannot fulfill. Young men need inspiration to face death for abstract causes, and societies need heroes to justify the sacrifices they demand from their citizens. Your legacy, such as it is, consists of students who might live slightly longer because they received honest instruction, children who will carry forward whatever wisdom they absorbed from their father's example, and words that record one man's journey from innocent enthusiasm through brutal experience to whatever understanding can be extracted from a lifetime of service to ideals that promised more than they delivered. Whether this inheritance proves worthwhile remains for others to judge, as your own reckoning draws to its inevitable close in the same castle where your story began, surrounded by people who love you despite the damage that love has cost them all. If you're still awake, I have to ask, why? Was the clank of armor too loud, or the reality a little too vivid? Let me know in the comments. Maybe next time we'll soften things with gentler stories. Or maybe we'll keep going deeper into the shadows of forgotten times. Next time, who knows where we'll end up, wandering through ancient marketplaces, or perhaps sitting quietly among monks, copying secrets into dusty scrolls. Wherever we go, the journey will be slow, thoughtful, and just a little eerie. Until then, take a quiet moment to appreciate how far we've come. The warmth of your bed, the silence around you, these are luxuries our ancestors couldn't imagine. Sleep well if you can. And if not, just listen closely. The past has a strange way of keeping us company in the dark. Until next time.